All right, welcome to Bet the Edge. I'm Jay Croucher, joined by the whale capper Drew Dinsick. Today, we're going to talk about one of my favorite markets, the comeback player of the year in the NFL. Drew will unveil his top 10 NFL power rankings, and we'll play off of that. And then we'll wrap up by talking about, certainly relative to expectations preseason, what is one of the most surprising lines, which is the Chargers +7 at the 49ers. But Drew, how are you? How did last night go for you?
Oh, last night was good. Got my full game under, no problem, and then caught a little Ravens at halftime. And the Ravens angle at halftime was pretty straightforward, which is that that defense for the Ravens it's the antithesis of boom or bust. They only give up boom. And if you're up against an offense that doesn't have the explosive player, the guy that can take the top off, the guy that can create kind of the home run threat, then you're going to struggle against that defense. And that's what the Saints were facing last night. And I think we kind of now have enough data on this Ravens defense to kind of say which offenses are really going to put them under pressure and which ones are not. And I think that's going to guide a lot of how these games go, because the offense is going to do its thing. They're going to score mid 20s points. They're much more comfortable playing from ahead than having to play in comeback mode. But we saw them come back against the Bucs, so we know they can do it. Lamar Jackson, of course, is carrying the ship entirely by himself, which is an impressive feat. But he's not going to have the statistical profile to get into the MVP race, in my opinion. And I think ultimately the Ravens are kind of an afterthought for an AFC at the end of the day. I will not be adding many Ravens to my futures, because at some point in the playoffs, they will run into a team that can take the top off the defense, and these guys are going to get exposed.
Yep. I think to your point about the Ravens, I don't think they have the upside, which is strange because Lamar Jackson is one of the highest upside players week to week, but just there's no pass catches. It's the same situation as Baltimore, except Aaron Rodgers can't run for 90 yards each game. I don't think the Ravens have that type of ceiling. To me, there's only one bet in the AFC, and we can talk about this later in the week, but I think the Chiefs now, who are still around +300 to win the AFC, to me, that is a bet because of, and this might get outdated pretty quickly, but there is, right now, that market is reflecting that Josh Allen is 100% Josh Allen. Is just going to play this week and be fine, which, it might just be fine, but there's also some uncertainty baked in, and you're just basically getting a free swing at the downside with Josh Allen by backing the Chiefs, around +300, that mark. So I think that is the bet on that side. Let's jump into comeback player of the year, where the market has moved drastically at the start of the season. So here's how wrong the market was at the start of the year. Derrick Henry, since the market opened at the end of last season, he was the favorite for comeback player of the year, I think pretty clearly. And Derrick Henry has vastly outperformed anything that I would have expected. We've talked about it. I think he should be second favorite for offensive player of the year. He is having an incredible season, and he has no chance whatsoever to win comeback player of the year because he never had a comeback story, because he already came back last year in the playoffs. So that was completely off. Michael Thomas was another favorite. Obviously, it didn't go great for Michael Thomas. And so now we're in a situation where Geno Smith, who a month or so ago was 50-1 to win this award, he is now -130 on PointsBet. He is the big mover. He is the favorite. Saquon Barkley, who was in the -200 range not long ago, he's +150 and the second favorite. Preseason, he was 30-1, 40-1 you could have gotten before he settled in just before the start of the year in the 15 to 21 range. And then outside of that, Christian McCaffrey's not going to win. He's +1,300. Nick Gates, who I know that some people are bullish on, I just don't think anyone really knows who Nick Gates is. If you ask random NFL fans what team he played for, you would get 32 different answers. So I just don't think he has the profile to win this award, particularly when Saquon is on his team as well. So I think this is a two-horse race between Geno and Saquon, and I'll go into who I think should be the clear horse in front. But is there anyone else that you think has a chance in this market?
Nope. This is a funny one because there's not really any rules here. No. It basically is
what society.
Yeah, right. And you know what, you put yourself into a sports columnist's shoes at the end of the year, trying to just get those. You know, it's holiday season. They're spending time with family. They're not really trying to, kind of really grind at this point in the year. They just want to get their column in and head home for the holidays. What positive story can I write? What can I, what player can I highlight as really having just an incredibly positive impact on the season that was a surprise? And that's sort of how this ends up becoming, kind of the comeback player of the year. It's much more so than you came back from a specific thing, a specific injury, because the top two guys on this list both played last year. They just stunk. And this year they've been excellent. And so that's a comeback, apparently. But that's the way it goes. I think realistically, Geno Smith, the effectively, this is a by proxy most improved player award, because, he went from, absolute true blue second unit only kind of a player to top 10 quarterback in the NFL. And this isn't fluky. It's been a perfect synergy with what they're doing in Seattle in terms of what they're asking him to do and what his skill set allows them to do. And it's been an awesome story. We've been capitalizing on it game by game. Hopefully capitalize on it with an NFC West title, and he should capitalize it with some end of the year hardware as well. But it's tough for me to say that there's going to be any more positive story to write when the dust settles at the end of this year than what a superlative emergence we've had from Geno Smith.
Yep, I'm with you there. And I think, you made all the points. The key one to me is that people are getting hung up on the definition of award, and they're getting the definition of comeback, and they're getting hung up on it in a way that the voters will not. Because the award is not, voters are not scrolling through the fine print and the terms and conditions. Awards like this, they get voted on in the spirit of the award. And in the spirit of the award, Geno is the guy. And when you ask, like, what did Geno actually come back from? Here's what he came back from. He came back from the dead. His career was done, and he's returned from the dead, and now he's thriving amongst the living. And that's his comeback story. And look, the thing is, with awards like this, one guy has separated himself from the pack when he starts getting talked about for other awards. And Geno Smith right now is being talked about for MVP. Now, he's not going to win MVP because the Seahawks are not going to get the 1 seed, and he's just not quite the same tier this year, even though he is kind of close to Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen and even, I guess, Jalen Hurts. I think Geno Smith is just as good as Jalen Hurts, to be honest. I don't think there's that much of a difference. But Hurts is on an unbeaten team, and Geno has 3 losses. But, that's the same thing. Like, Bill Barnwell, he wrote an article yesterday where he's talking about Sauce Gardner as a defensive player of the year candidate. So I was like, all right, well, if he's the candidate, he's probably going to win defensive rookie of the year. I think we were talking as well about how there was some very small chatter about Micah Parsons for MVP. And so, he's probably going to win defensive player of the year then if he stays healthy. And I think Geno, he's top 5 in just everything, in DVOA and PFF grade, passer rating, completion percentage, QBR, like everything. He's been an elite quarterback on a team that just went over its preseason win total this week in week 9, because they were set at 5.5. So to me, Geno, I wouldn't feel great about laying minus 250 on Geno, honestly, because I think it's just a bet on health and the Seahawks making the playoffs. I think the Seahawks should be minus 800 to make the playoffs at this point in the NFC, or in that range, and that's contingent on Geno staying healthy as well. So I think he just wins the award with health and avoiding complete outliers. Anyway, let's talk about your power rankings, Drew. But first, reminder to download the RotoWorld app to receive breaking player news all season long. Stay ahead of the competition by favoriting players on your roster. Get the latest injury updates, player news, and much more delivered right to your phone. It's available in the App Store today. Okay, let's talk top 10 NFL power rankings by Drew Dinsick after week 9. Let's start going from 10 through to 6. I'm just going to read these out, and then I'll let you play off it. And so you've got the Vikings at number 10, making them 2 points better than the average team. Ravens number 9, 2.5 points better, which I think will surprise some people that they are that low, given they are, I think, the 5th favorite for the Super Bowl. Bengals at number 8, 2.5 points better as well. Exact same rating as the Ravens, which will again surprise people. The mighty Seattle Seahawks, 7th, 3 points better, same as the Niners in 6th, 3 points better. So what do you want to hit on among these teams?
Well, I think you bring up some interesting points, and notably the fact that I have at least a tie here between the Bengals and the Ravens. Bengals outperforming the Ravens clearly in EPA per play so far this season. You have to downgrade them a hair because their competition that they've gone against has been substantially weaker than the Ravens. Ravens have played a tougher schedule to this point. But in reality, we kind of hit it off the top. The Ravens can be beaten on defense by a game-breaking wide receiver or two. And they will have to face one of those players, one of those teams or two in a playoff run. And I think realistically, because their defense is susceptible to the big play, they really can't be any more than a field goal favorite against a neutral team on an average team on a neutral field. With the weapons that they have on offense, this is still an offense that I have kind of mean expectation right in the mid-20s. So because the offense doesn't have that much of an upside to the good, and the defense can be susceptible, they have to kind of be in the bottom half of the top 10 in my mind. So they have to be in the lower quartile of the upper quartile if you
yes,
catch my drift.
Yes, quartiles are everything.
The other kind of key point I want to make is the Bengals, they realistically, this is still an offensive driven team. They have a defense that is suffering from a cluster injury at cornerback. So if you were to tell me that we redo this in 4 weeks, who's going to fall out of the top 10? My eyes are most clearly fixed on the Bengals, because if that defense takes some meaningful steps backwards with the cluster injury at cornerback, they're going to find themselves completely out of the playoff mix and below average in terms of power rating. So I'm keen on kind of watching how that plays out. But Ravens don't deserve a top 5 spot in my mind. And then, you mentioned it. What a race in the NFC West between the Seahawks and the Niners. No difference between these teams as currently rostered. The Seahawks defense has improved immeasurably from the start of the season to what they are currently constituted in terms of DVOA, in terms of EPA per play. It is awesome to watch this young defense grow and thrive. And the Niners, on the other hand, are still, they have a lot to prove. It's an inconsistent team. Jimmy Garoppolo, not necessarily a guy that I'm really willing to stake my future on, outside of the fact that he is the one quarterback in the NFC playoff picture. As we sit here today, he's the only guy with the experience. And I think that matters. But it doesn't really give me much confidence in rating the Niners as an elite team.
Yep, no, I'm with you there. The Seahawks defense, that's been the surprise, because I think we knew even a couple of weeks ago that this offense was just a legit top 8 offense with the way Geno's playing, with the weapons in Lockett, Metcalf, and Walker, and an offensive line that's not great, but it's not a catastrophe either. But it's the defense, which I just didn't think it had these performances, in them, to hold the Cardinals to 9 points, to keep the Chargers relatively in check. This is just now a solid defense. They're getting more out of Nwosu than you would have expected. Tariq Woolen just coming out of nowhere to be, a shutdown corner in the NFL has really increased the ceiling of that team. Just quickly on the Ravens before we go to your top 5, I think the most important player for the Ravens for the rest of the season, well, it's Lamar Jackson, clearly.
I was going to say, probably Lamar Jackson. Yeah,
it's Lamar Jackson, but once we go out, if we go more into the niche realm, I think Kyle Hamilton is the most important swing piece for that team, because right now he's got an 81 PFF grade. He has really taken steps after a pretty rough initiation. He's looking a lot better. He had incredible draft pedigree. He was being talked about as potentially a top 5-7 pick at one point. The advanced numbers have always loved Kyle Hamilton, and he's not playing the snaps at the moment. I think he's only got 250 snaps on the season, but when he's been out there, he's getting a lot better. And if you add him to what they already have in Marlon Humphrey in particular, who is another legit shutdown corner. Now, Marcus Peters might just be done, and he was bad last night, and he really should have got burned for a touchdown to Marquez Callaway that Dalton just airmailed. But so he would be the concern. But if Hamilton can give them elite safety play, which is in play given his pedigree, then that would change the complexion of their defense. But I agree, as currently constructed, I don't think they have the ceiling. Certainly the top 4 teams that we're going to talk about. Number 5, I think there's an argument for, though they have a high ceiling too. And let's jump into that, your top 5. So 5 are the Miami Dolphins, which I think are probably the biggest shock on this list, that they are in the top 5, 3.5 points better than the average team. Then the Dallas Cowboys, our darling, number 4, 4 points better. No. Eagles, number 3, 4.5 points better. Then the Chiefs and the Bills in that order. Chiefs 5.5 better, Bills 7 better. Just quickly, if it's Case Keenum for the Bills, how much better are they than average?
Bills fall to 9. If we switch out Josh Allen for Case Keenum, I would downgrade them 5-ish, 4.5, 5 points down. They go from a 7 to a 2.5 by my numbers. But it's again, I think my current, we'll talk about this tomorrow. I think Josh Allen probably misses about 3 games. I think that you look at the schedule, that's kind of, it makes sense, right? Because the third game would be the short week, Thanksgiving, Detroit. They can win those 3 games, presumably with Case Keenum, Minnesota, Cleveland, and Detroit. So I think realistically, you see Josh Allen take the field again December 1st against the Patriots. That's just my gut read. No inside information on that. The other teams that you mentioned, and we'll start with the number 5 Miami Dolphins here. This is a throwback team to a football of a different era when offense mattered. Right, like this is a team that doesn't really fit the current iteration of the NFL in terms of what they're doing well, and it doesn't look like the rest of the teams in the NFL. They have 2 absolute speed threat, game-breaking wide receivers going along with an absolute godlike scheming from Mike McDaniel. And Tua is performing fine. He has some lows, by the way. If you look at his tape, there are some outlier what in the world was happening there kind of moments. But it does not matter when any given down, you can hit a 20-yard game breaker or a 40-yard screen pass turns into a 40-yard touchdown. Like it's crazy, crazy, crazy how explosive this team is. And there is no one else now with Jamar Chase out and some of the offensive line issues in Cincinnati. There is no one that comes close to the explosiveness that the Miami Dolphins currently have on the field on any given down. So you have to absolutely keep them in the discussion as a top 5 team, even though their defense has stunk out loud. We talked about how over the last 4 weeks, Seahawks defense, number 2 in the league in EPA per play. Miami Dolphins defense, bottom half of the league. This has been a rough go for these guys of late, and you don't have to look any further than just last week, where they were fighting for their lives against a team that you would have thought they had, clearly would be able to cover with, without any real threats in the passing game. But all that said, defense for the Miami Dolphins has taken a massive step backwards this year, but the offense, particularly led by the Mike McDaniel scheme, has been amazing. And I do not see that stopping anytime soon, even though we're getting into the winter months and it does become a little bit more of a, kind of chess matchy instead of just being able to exercise your explosiveness and get your way. But Dolphins play in warm weather. Dolphins don't have an especially tough schedule. I think this team is absolutely in the mix for a playoff seed, and maybe threatens the Bills for the AFC East if the Bills do stumble in the absence of Josh Allen.
Yeah, key there is that Miami did win that first game, so they have the tiebreak right now. So it's not quite this simple, but you would almost make their division price, their head-to-head price to win a game in Buffalo, and then a little bit, you're still projecting the Bills as a better team, so it's a little bit on top of that, but that's a huge leverage game. I'm with you on Miami's upside. I think Tyreek Hill is probably the most valuable non-quarterback in the league, along with Aaron Donald. It's probably Tyreek and Aaron Donald. Those are the 2. I think he separated himself. Micah Parsons.
Yeah.
In that
Micah Parsons.
Yeah. Micah Parsons is there too. But I think Tyreek has as good a case as anyone. I think he should be the clear offensive player of the year favorite. By my numbers, he should be plus 175 for that award. He's still value in the market, even though the market has finally caught up and made him favorite. And then you raised it with the defense, which has been very, very bad, mainly against the pass, which is what you don't want to be bad against, even in today's NFL. But there is upside on this defense, and it comes with Xavier Howard getting healthier, getting right. I mean, he was being an elite shutdown cornerback in the league previously, and he's been horrific this year because he's been banged up. So there is upside there. Javon Holland's a good safety. They lack in the secondary outside of those 2. But the defensive line now with Bradley Chubb, I mean, you add him to Jalen Phillips and Melvin Ingram. Like, there is talent on that defensive line. And I think the Chubb, even though I don't think either of us love Chubb as a player relative to his perception because he was such a high draft pick, but at the same time, like, the ripple effects now of having another guy that means that you can just rush 4 and not have to blitz so much and expose that secondary, which hasn't held up. I do think the Dolphins have a ton of upside. Before we move on, let's just talk quickly about Philly and Dallas. So you make these teams basically neck and neck.
Yeah, I don't see much difference between them, and that may shock people. I think as you kind of digest sort of the mainstream power ratings, Philly's going to be number 1 on everybody's board. And that's because they're the last undefeated team. And and Bills just lose. Got to move them down to 3, maybe farther. And that by attrition, Philly is now conceived as the number 1 team. Make no mistake, if they played tomorrow with Allen on the field, the Eagles would be 3.5-point dogs on a neutral. Is that, you think that's fair? 3-point dogs? They would be dogs. And similarly against the Chiefs, they'd be 3-point dogs. Like this Philadelphia Eagles team, even though they have been amazing this year, the disparity in terms of competition that they have faced on every other team that matters is pretty stark. Like you can't deny it. And just on that basis alone, we don't really know how good the Eagles are. And they may be a little bit insistent on a game plan, just working in their favor. They obviously, the NFC right now goes through the link. They're going to get a bye. They're going to be healthy, presumably. They are the team to beat in the NFC. I don't disparage any of that. But the margin between them and the Cowboys is negligible. The Cowboys are now at full strength. The offensive line, which was considered somewhat of an Achilles heel to start the season, has played very well. They have now a full complement of wide receivers with Michael Gallup returning. And I think just the emergence of Tony Pollard to complement Zeke Elliott when he's healthy is a solid 1-2 running back duo. And you kind of now have a complete full team around Dak Prescott, who is, when complemented with these pieces, a clear top 10 quarterback in the NFL. No question. On the other side of the football, Michael Parsons has been the best defensive player in football this year, and it has not been close. And Dan Quinn is orchestrating an absolutely superlative defense so far. Cowboys defense ought to be your top-rated defense in the NFL, in my opinion, and a lot of it runs through Parsons. So I'm excited to see these two teams play, obviously, coming up on Christmas Eve. You're going to get a healthy dose of Cowboys if you're watching primetime TV between now and Christmas. It is just Cowboys, 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 Cowboys. So just, prepare yourself if you're not a Cowboys fan.
Yeah, I'm with you completely. I have the Cowboys rated slightly in front of the Eagles, which I think would be surprising to most, but I just think they have a better defense. They have, to me, still a better quarterback. I still rank Dak Prescott higher than Jalen Hurts, despite their MVP odds and everything respectively. And I think the perception of Jalen Hurts as well has risen above Dak Prescott in the eyes of many, but I would still take Dak in a playoff game. And then I think just the upside getting healthier on the offensive line, I think the Cowboys are right there. And then just quickly on the top 2, Chiefs, Bills. I was doing this thought exercise last night. I would make the Bills with Allen 3.5-point favorites at home to the Chiefs in an AFC title game, which is basically in line with what you've got here once you factor in home field. I would make the Chiefs 5-point favorites home to the Ravens in the divisional round matchup or whatever. So then that pretty much aligns with you too. And also, just before we move on to the last segment, if you're thinking about like Super Bowl bets versus conference bets, like you have to math out what the team is going to be in the Super Bowl. And that's why generally, like with a team like the Chiefs, you're better off just backing the Super Bowl price, because the market it's doing too much of just like doubling the conference price into the Super Bowl. Whereas the Chiefs, I think on average in the Super Bowl would be -180 money line, that type of range, 3.5, 4-point favorites, that type of range. So probably 4-point favorites on average in the Super Bowl, I'd say. They're probably going to be 2.5-point favorites against the Eagles. Similar against the Cowboys, and then bigger than that against everyone else. And there's a huge chance that the NFC representative isn't the Eagles or the Cowboys. There's even a chance that it's like the Seahawks, in which case the Chiefs are 7-point favorites in the Super Bowl. Who knows? It's a crazy world.
One other huge point to add to this, because I completely agree. The Chiefs are what? They're a market darling. You think anyone who is making markets is not like they're all aware. Like the minute the Chiefs run, like I'm gonna have them in pocket. No way. I'm not getting left out of the party here. No way. Yeah. Like that team gets market support like no one else in the NFL, because Patrick Mahomes is that good. He's that elite, and they may not deserve it, but like if there's one team that the market rating can absolutely disappear on you, it is the Chiefs. And they may, by default, like the true price may be 2.5, 3 in a Super Bowl matchup against an elite NFC team. But the idea that the market isn't going to surcharge that with another point and a half, you're not going to have another opportunity to get any equity out, I don't think, unless you get involved at some point. And the Chiefs can move into the 1 seed. They can continue to win. But at the same time, and the pressure is on them to keep winning, because a Chiefs loss at this point, if they move back a step at all, and they end up in the 3 seed, for instance, or even a 4 seed for whatever reason, if they have to play the Bills in the coming off of a bye instead of getting them in the AFC Championship game, that's a huge swing in terms of win probability. So Chiefs very volatile right now, but if they go, the market is going to absolutely push that price to the ceiling.
Yep, they don't have a particularly difficult schedule. I'd say it's about neutral going forward as well, so that's not a concern. All right, just a reminder, if you don't have the NBC Sports Predictor app, go download it now. The contests are free and easy to play, and you have a shot to win thousands this weekend by predicting what will happen in college football, on the PGA Tour, and in the Premier League. There is also $100,000 up for grabs by guessing the outcome between the Chargers and 49ers in our Sunday Night 7 contest. Let's talk about that game. The line is 49ers -7. The total is 46.5. Preseason, this would have been -2, I would guess, in that range. Basically the same team, same power rating. And now it has changed substantially, with the Chargers just dealing with a cluster of injuries at every position. They've lost both their starting wideouts. Don't know what the hell is happening with Keenan Allen's hamstring. Mike Williams dealing with the high ankle sprain. No Joey Bosa, no Rashawn Slater. So that's a lot of their best players gone, and the line is 7. Is this too many points, though, against Justin Herbert?
So, Jay, the preseason market up at all of our onshore shops here, pick 'em. Yeah, this was a pick 'em. This was a pick 'em. But again, that was
at that point, yeah.
This was expected to be Trey Lance in primetime for the first time, I think, right? Or this would have been his second or third primetime game. But either way, this was the Chargers were world beaters in the eyes of the futures market makers to start the season. It just hasn't manifest because they have been the most injured team in terms of impactful players to this point in the season, and it hasn't been close. Like, they have suffered immeasurably from injuries. And you know what's crazy? There was a little bit of move in favor of the Niners yesterday. It wasn't significant, but it was something. And the best I can trace it back to is Trey Pipkins may not go. And that's the state that we are in here for the Chargers, where Trey Pipkins' availability matters, because if he's out for this game, then you have a Storm Norton appearance up against a defensive line that's fully healthy. Don't want to see Storm Norton in this game. And again, if you don't know who Trey Pipkins is, you're not alone. Many people do not know who Trey Pipkins is, but he is currently their starting tackle. And if that becomes a Storm Norton appearance, and he's up against the Niners D line, then you can pretty much
Storm Norton against Nick Bosa. Is that going to work out?
Do not love. And actually, I mean, Nick Bosa, similarly, Chargers not moving Herbert effectively in the pocket, and not moving him out of the pocket because of that rib injury. So he is a sitting duck in large part if that's their offensive line, which is bad. I want to back the Chargers here. This is an inflated price beyond belief. But yeah, because again, it's not a good matchup for Jimmy G. He gets to go now throwing the ball with Derwin James ball hawking back there. That's not great for him. In general, his chemistry with the wide receivers still, somewhat questionable. His ability to operate the offense is somewhat questionable. But I think the right side here is the Chargers. But please let Trey Pipkins play.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's not a great matchup where the Chargers, as they did last year, just have a horrific run defense again, 4th worst in the league by DVOA. So it's not a great matchup against Kyle Shanahan and Christian McCaffrey and everything that the Niners do in the run game. But 7 points is a lot when there's this level of quarterback mismatch. Justin Herbert, he looks healthy again. He looks like Justin Herbert again. I think we can kind of move beyond that rib injury when we're pricing out who Herbert is going forward. They're extremely banged up. But at the same time, I just think that, we'll see what happens with Keenan Allen, but this is a lot of points for Jimmy Garoppolo to be laying against Justin Herbert. So it's Chargers +7 or pass for me, but it's close enough where if it was 6.5, I'd probably take the Niners in that spot. Before we go, Drew, just want to mention that last night we did nail. Well, I didn't nail. You and Vaughn Dalzell nailed the association. Vaughn went 8-0 on his prop bet, so check that out going forward. And you had the mighty Atlanta Hawks. You didn't even need Trae Young to get that one home with ease. That was an easy win. And then also, who else? You had the Pacers as well. And
Pacers and Hawks money lines came through for me, and then my chalk let me down. But overall, it was a winning night thanks to the mighty Hawks. You mentioned it. Crazy game. The association is wild right now. I don't know why they did this with the schedule. I guess it's for voting day here in America, but it's interesting how November is playing out so far, and this is more wide open than I ever would imagine. Did you watch much of Celtics Grizz?
I did. Yes, I just think the Grizz you felt the absence of Jaren Jackson last night, especially with Steven Adams also not there. I think that was the difference. The Celtics look phenomenal. The fact that Peyton Pritchard can't even get off the bench for this team just goes to show their perimeter depth. I still think they're the best team in the East, particularly when Robert Williams comes back. They're just a juggernaut. The Grizz, John Morant did not look great last night. His fourth quarter, he was just repeatedly just driving into traffic, just heaving up trash. He'll be better going forward. I still think the Grizz are the team to bet in the West because they're going to look so much different when Jaren Jackson gives them that size, that athleticism, that shot blocking presence, and also the spacing at 5. So it was a fun game, and I think we're going to be talking about both of those teams a lot. All right, we are done. Don't forget to check out NBCSportsEdge.com for more information to help you with your wagers. Thanks, everyone watching on the NBC Sports YouTube channel. And if you're listening in podcast form, don't forget to rate and subscribe us. From Jay Croucher and Drew Dinsick, we'll see you tomorrow.